Last month, Nintendo released its first Game & Watch for 29 years. This is in celebration of the 35th anniversary of Super Mario. And this one has a full copy of the original Super Mario Bros. From, wait for it, 35 years ago. Funny that, isn't it? Now straight away I can tell you that it's a lovely little device. Its design is very reminiscent of the original Game & Watch. The colour scheme is inspired from the original Famicom. Its screen is lovely and bright, as you can see, and it's sharper than a two-edged sword. And it's not on sale for very long either. It's only until March of 2021. So if you are even remotely interested in picking up one of these, you're best off getting one sooner rather than later. But there are a couple of problems with this little thing. Firstly, I know many people whom have never seen a Game & Watch release before within their lifetimes. So really the nostalgia for this only appeals to old fuddy-duddies like myself. Secondly, it's such a dinky little thing that anyone old enough to remember the Game & Watch is going to struggle to make anything out on that tiny screen. And their hands will be so cramped up playing it that they'll be convinced that they're developing carpal tunnel. So no, this isn't the best way to play Super Mario Bros. It's a great way to play it, but it's just not quite there. So if you're dying for your OG Super Mario Bros. Fix, what's the best way to play it today? Hello fellow gamers, and I'm sorry, but our princess is in another castle. So what is the best way to play Super Mario Bros. Today? Now, best is subjective, I admit, so I'm going to be going for all of the official certified releases of the game, so anyone claiming PC emulation is best, get out! And we should really talk about the best way to play for your everyday person who isn't going to be tinkering around with the hardware or the setup, so any modding or hacking involved in order to play the game, that's out as well. Now of course, in order to find the best way to play it, we need to judge against how well the port has been done. How close is it to the original? Is it accurate? And, most importantly, how close an experience does it give you to the original release? And with that, you know what, let's have a look at the original NES version first. It is the original, so it's got to be the best, right? And... ugh. Ugh. Oh. Ugh. Ugh. Dear me. Sadly, this is what we can expect from the original. Without something like a HDMI mod on the system, we're going to be greeted with this blurry, wobbly mess. Not to mention the added lag that your TV is going to introduce as well. Now for us peeps in the PAL territories, there's another factor that we need to take into account. The original release was the usual 20% slower than everywhere else. So what Nintendo did is they did a re-release of the NES version over here where they attempted to speed it up. Unfortunately, this resulted in the music playing faster as well. This Super Mario / Duck Hunt bundle cartridge is one such example of this re-release, and this is what it sounds like. A bit off, isn't it? Now if this were plugged into a bog standard CRT, this would definitely be the yardstick for which all of the other versions of the game would be measured, as it encompasses the whole original Super Mario Bros. Experience with the right game and with the right controller. However, since the average player isn't going to have a bulky CRT just lying around, as much as it pains me, we can't consider the original NES release today. Another way to play the classic game is on the Super Mario All-Stars compilation on the SNES. This was Nintendo's first All-Stars release, and you can tell straight away that they put a lot more effort into this than the recent 3D All-Stars release. The graphics are all much nicer than the original, much more Super Mario World-esque. And they even included the lost levels for the first time outside of Japan. You know, like they have done on the Game & Watch as well. There's a similar problem here as with the original NES though, where the picture is going to be quite a bit on the soft side by default if you're playing it on an original SNES. Now you could get a much better image using an RGB SCART cable. I wouldn't consider this a mod, but Johnny Everygamer isn't going to know about that. Alternatively, you can also play this on the Wii and on the Wii U thanks to Nintendo's release celebrating Super Mario's 25th anniversary. To mimic the whole SNES experience, you can even use the controller from a SNES Classic Mini in the Wii remote. This game was released yet again, this time on the Switch via Nintendo's online service. The SNES experience can be replicated here too, using either Nintendo's official wireless SNES controllers, or you can use one of 8BitDo's SF30 Pros. Now there'll be some people declaring, well that's it, this is the best way to play the game. The graphics are better, you can play it in HD, you can use a much more comfortable controller, yada yada yada. Now while both of these are true, I'd still say this isn't the best way to play the game. For me, this all boils down to how Mario controls. I can't put my finger on it, but Mario is much more floaty in this game compared to the original. There's also this weird thing where he doesn't interact with brick blocks properly. I mean, in the original, when he nuts a brick block, the block breaks and Mario instantly heads downwards again. But in this, he carries on kind of through the block as it breaks. I know it's a small detail, but it's such a weird change, and every time I play this version of the game, it always throws me off. So, as pretty as it is, no, Super Mario All-Stars, doesn't matter what platform you're playing it on, it's also not the best either. So really, that leaves us with other ports that are more in keeping with the original. Now with this in mind, meet the next official release of the game. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color, it's quite the faithful port of the original, and it was all the way back in '99. Graphics are spot on, even with a bit more animated detail on the water and lava, and it even includes a challenge mode and Game Boy printer compatibility. You can even play it on the big screen via the GameCube's Game Boy player. All in all, it's a nice little package with plenty to keep you interested. However, it has one huge problem, and I bet you've noticed it already. The Game Boy Color's lower resolution screen compared to the NES means that you lose a lot of visibility. On the original, you can see what's coming up, but on the Game Boy Color you barely see a thing. Instead of dashing through levels, you're treading much more carefully. Playing it on a GameCube, or even its re-release on a 3DS, does nothing to negate this issue. So Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, as nice as its bells and whistles are, this one's out too. The next official portable release was on the Game Boy Advance in 2004, and this looked much more promising. It's more or less a straight port of the original NES title. It controls the same, you can see everything, and it plays really well. The problem with this version though is the aspect ratio of the GBA screen. It's not the 4:3 aspect ratio of old, and it's not quite 16:9 widescreen either. It sits somewhere in between. And the game hasn't been tweaked to accommodate that screen shape either, it's simply stretched to fill a lot. So it doesn't look quite right, and it's a little on the soft side. So maybe you can play it on the Game Boy Player and adjust your TV. It's a bit much to ask to play an old game from the 80s, but you could. However, unfortunately, the Game Boy Player brings with it its usual blurriness, so it doesn't make for a good gaming experience. There is this neat little quirk with this title though. You can play 2-player either on the one Game Boy Advance or with a second one via a link cable, and you don't need a second copy. When you choose the latter, it basically copies over the entire ROM to the other GBA. And better yet, when you disconnect the cable, it can carry on playing without the cartridge plugged in, so your mate can get to play it for free until he turns it off. So this version, it's not a bad attempt with a nice 2-player option, but that aspect ratio problem is a deal breaker, at least for me. One version that definitely keeps the right aspect ratio is the one on the Wii Virtual Console, released here in 2007. It's just another ROM release, no bells, no whistles, no tweaks, which is good, and you can play it with the Wii remote on its side, so it's quite similar to an NES controller. But, get this, the version released here in Europe is the same one as the re-release version on the NES, the one that I mentioned earlier, complete with the faster music. Have a listen. Also, what happened to the colours? They're all a little bit off, aren't they? I mean, if you compare it to the NES original, you can tell straight away that the palette is different. It's also unusually dark, which is sadly a trait with all of the NES games on the Wii. Another problem is its availability. You can't get it on the Wii Shop anymore, but you can still get it on the Wii U, and, thanks to its native HDMI, it would look a lot sharper on that one anyway. But eventually though, the Wii U's digital store is going to go the way of the dodo too, and this is precisely the reason why I prefer to get physical media. Stores can shut down, but you'd still have access to that game. 5 years later, in 2012, Nintendo took another stab at releasing the original by putting it on sale on the 3DS eShop. Now the colours and brightness are about right this time, the proper aspect ratio has been kept, and you have the bonus of playing it on the go. There are a couple of caveats with this one though. Controlling Mario with that joystick isn't great, and even on the new 3DS XL, scrunching up to use that D-pad is uncomfortable at best. Nintendo also took advantage of the 3DS's vertical resolution as well, because it's exactly the same as it is on the NES. That means this part of the game is actually pretty sharp. So far, this is looking to be the best alternative to the Game & Watch. It's not looking good so far, is it? It seems that the best actual version of the game can only be played on a portable system. But then Nintendo gave us this little gem. The NES Classic. It released in November of 2016, which is probably a peculiar time actually, as that was only a couple of weeks after they properly unveiled the Switch. It has a number of NES games installed, including Now this is more like it. It's the original ROM, it's really clear, the colours are right, you can even play with a perfect recreation of the original controller. There are even different display settings too. So by default you've got the original 4:3 aspect ratio, which, granted, is a little soft, and you get this slight rippling effect when walking along on some levels. But you've also got other options, such as this surprisingly accurate CRT effect, or, my personal favourite, Pixel Perfect. So you've got the best of both worlds here. Either you can cut your eyes out with the big sharp pixels, or you can return to simpler times and play it like it's on a CRT. When Nintendo launched its Switch Online service a couple of years later, it brought with it a select number of NES titles. Once again, Super Mario Bros. Was amongst the first of those released. Now, games on the Switch's NES app work more or less the same as if they were on the NES Classic. It's still the same ROM, you have the same display options, and like the NES Classic, you have multiple save state slots as well. You can recreate that NES feeling with official controllers, again only available to Nintendo Switch Online subscribers, and you have the benefit of playing it on the go as well. On an OG Switch, this isn't quite like playing with the original controller, but on the Switch Lite, the inclusion of a proper D-pad helps bridge that gap. I'm not a fan of that faded grey border on either side of the game though. It would be nice if Nintendo gave us the option to just make that blank. We don't need it all filled in. I don't know, maybe in a future update? Grey border aside, there is one possible issue with this, in that you'd have to be a subscriber to Nintendo's online service in order to play Super Mario Bros. This way. Now, we're still in the early days of the service, so it's fine to do it this way for now, but what about in the future? Will the service change? Will it be stopped entirely? I mean, it would be nice if Nintendo decides to make all of these games available on the Switch without a subscription once the service ends, but there's no guarantee of that. The uncertainty is a bit of a worry. So, we have covered pretty much every single full official release of Super Mario Bros. And, as far as I'm concerned, the best way to play Super Mario Bros. In all of its glory is the NES Classic. It just ticks all of the right boxes. It's faithful to the original release. You play it on the big screen. The colours and brightness are right. You've got different display options. You play it with more or less an original NES controller. You have save states if you want to carry on playing it later. And more importantly, you're not tied to a service that may disappear in the future. And yes, of course, pick up the Game & Watch, especially if you are nostalgic about it, but if you want the proper OG Super Mario Bros. Fix, best pick yourself up an NES Classic. And with that, I'm off. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the video with a like or dislike down below. And I've got a question for the commenters out there. When was the first time that you played the original Super Mario Bros? Let everyone know down below. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll catch you all next time. Now, let's see if you can still pick up an NES Classic. Oh, I hope so. Oh. Super Mario Bros. On Switch, anyone?